Hi everyone, welcome back to GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us this Friday afternoon, as we oftentimes do. Get to welcome in GoLocal columnist Robert Whitcomb.
Hi.
Thank you for coming in today. Never a dull moment, especially in June when
that's right.
fiscal years are coming to a close.
They're burning the whale oil and seeing what they can do in the dim light.
Let's start here in the city of Providence. Now, earlier this week, some numbers had been floated out there what a new potential tax structure could look like. House Finance Chair John Igliozzi quickly refuted those, said that plans would be released, which they did yesterday. House Finance, where GoLocal was at last night, was quite heated. What's your sense here?
We should say why, because a lot of people on the east side who pretty much write the big checks, the campaign contributions, fear that their property tax will surge. That's basically it. Most of the money, the contributions around here comes from the east side, so it puts the politicians under some stress, some complexity.
Do you think this pits the east side against the rest of the city?
Yeah, right. It does. It's sort of a class warfare.
It
may well be fair, though. I don't know. Maybe it's fair. As a friend of mine, you may be aware of, suggested perhaps they should, cut everybody's tax who earns household income $40,000 or less and raise everybody else's, or something like that. Maybe that's fair, but from a practical standpoint, the people like Mayor Lorza do not want the donors' checks to dry up, and B, they certainly don't want a lot of rich people to leave town.
Well, you talk about not wanting the donor checks to dry up on the east side. Clearly, some other folks are taking into account the rest of the city, and folks who have
the majority of the city,
folks who have political aspirations moving forward, and say, you know what, I'm going to represent this other part of the city, make taxes a little less for them.
Who's going to write them checks, though?
Well, we'll see in the next election cycle.
To take the ads out and go local.
Here's my question for you. Mayor Lorza called the plan illegal, of course, backing the East Siders. Do you think the plan goes through or not?
I don't think it will.
Okay.
No, I think there'd be too much pressure. There could be a legal problem in your what's the word, singling out people, which could be unconstitutional, believe it or not.
Well,
but I know, I've read it, and also we're getting different versions of this. Some people are saying, high-level people are saying, well, no, that's not what we're doing, and the smoke machine's going nonstop, and there are diversionary things going on.
The smoke machine was going full-time because numbers were released again early, then the real ones were only released just yesterday. People who showed up last night were still operating off of those numbers that they had seen early on Monday.
Right, they were enraged.
They were enraged. It was a very, very, very heated meeting. And we shall see moving forward what happens. But let's stick in the city for a little bit, Bob, because I do want to talk a little bit about last weekend. PVD Fest.
The shooting.
For the most part, marred what was a lovely weekend with great musicians and great acts downtown. But it just showed the duplicity, perhaps, if you will, of PVD Fest needs to have a permit, a license before the Board of Licenses. Whenever there is a shooting outside a bar, a restaurant, a club, if it happens at Saturday morning, literally at 2 o'clock in the morning, they are hauled down to City Hall at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning for an immediate show cause hearing to say, hey, your license is in peril. We're going to look into this. We may or may not give it back. So should the city of Providence not have been asked to explain safety protocol, what occurred, and should the license be granted next year?
Again, not being there, I'm not sure how well you could prevent something like that. Some lunatic shows up with a gun. I mean, we're all wherever we go, we're at the the mercy of people like that. Are there things that could have been done to discourage it? Should there be more police force, private security forces? I don't know. I think you're always going to have that danger in a large group. You can't just. I would like to hide under a rock, which is where I've basically been living the last 30 years. I'd like to stay under my rock, but you can't do it indefinitely.
I mean,
you want people to get outside. You don't want, it's like 9/11 in New York. To the good people of New York, they kept, being New Yorkers. And that's what you want.
Well, we'll see moving forward next year. Let's stay in the city before we go statewide and international, if you will. Let's talk about the flap at the Biltmore, the Graduate Hotel. Pictures of former Mayor Buddy
Cianci. I'm glad they withdrew it. Clearly, the people over the managers did not know the history. I hate that word colorful, but I'll use it anyway. The spicy history of Mayor Cianci, who, as I've written, was pretty good in 3 or 4 big projects that he helped get someone else to pay for, like the feds to move the river, the Civic Center, which was a state thing, and other things. Rarely the
PPAC.
city, PPAC, yeah, this is.
And the Biltmore itself, because that's what the
That's
CNC
right.
Foundation really took a front
Yeah,
with.
that's right.
I think their they said it would be a parking lot with weeds if this wasn't for the mayor. So there clearly
No,
was.
wrong, wrong. The people who saved that, there were three big businessmen. There was Bill Miller, who was running Textron at the time, later U.S. Treasury Secretary, Michael P. Metcalf, the publisher of the Providence Journal, and somebody else. I can't remember who it was.
So
It wasn't Joseph Stalin.
You're crying foul on the.
Right, they wanted to save it. They wanted to save it, and they came up with the money. And I know because the Providence Journal was basically the managing partner in that. I knew the guy who was running it, Dave Donnelly. So no, Buddy took credit for that. He took credit for saving Trinity Square. They had a director called Ann Bogart who antagonized a lot of people, and there was a recession, looked like it was going to go under. And Buddy got, I think it was 250 grand in federal community development money to put into it, and then other people coughed up money too. So he was good at that, but he also put the city on the edge of a precipice by giving away the store and pensions.
It is interesting. It does go to
Yeah.
show.
And, I mean, nobody's perfect. He was violent, drug abuser, all these things too. But who am I to judge?
It's kind of the Graduate Hotel. I've been inside. The
Yeah.
rehab looks fantastic.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
was a lot
I've
of
been
chirping
yeah.
when they first put up the
Yeah.
neon sign. I mean, they announced that they were coming into Providence, but I think most people just
Yeah.
didn't know. So when they saw Graduate up there, they sort of
Yeah.
took a huge step back. But it kind of goes to show sometimes out of towners getting a real deep dive into
Yes, that's
local.
right. Well, I just wish they'd
local
done a little more
politics.
research, in-depth research.
A deep dive.
Also, I have to say, I'm sick of the whole Buddy Cianci thing and the mob and all. That's really tedious.
So
It's
are
kind of
you
ancient
gonna
history.
see the Prince of Providence at the?
No.
Okay.
No.
He's not gonna see
No,
it.
No. And as you know, I knew the mayor quite well.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Let's
He
get
was always
out-
very nice to me. I don't know why.
Let's get outside the city. Let's talk about something that GoLocal has covered extensively. GoLocal was first to report that legislators up at the State House were introducing legislation for a board of trustees to oversee the University of
Which
Rhode
I
Island.
favor, by the way.
Now,
I haven't
did you
written
know
about it. I
that-
think there should be a separate board.
Did you know that what GoLocal had uncovered, that board, the Office of Post-Secondary
Yeah,
Education,
yeah.
Only one URI graduate on that board?
Yeah, like private, right. Graduates of fancy private colleges, right?
So I guess that office had
Why
a
aren't
little...
you on the board?
Harvard has not called me yet.
No.
But so this
They have enough scandals of their own, as we know. Like the coach, the house, never mind. We'll talk about that next week.
But do you think this is the right move for URI?
Yes, I do. I think it'll be better. I realized Rick and CCRI, they do great stuff for the community, but URI is different. It's a research university. It's competing with other major research universities in the area. UMass and Connecticut has certainly come up a lot, and this just brings in money. This brings in money from the feds. It brings in money from private industry and foundations. And I think the the challenges, the duties of a state university are different than the colleges.
Well, it looks like it has a fairly good green light up at the assembly.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
think so. I was surprised at the rage expressed by, maybe I wasn't surprised. It's natural,
Yes.
Why should they?
A fiefdom, if you will.
It's not that URI is better, it's just different. It aspires to be. In fact, it has to be a research university.
Yes.
So, I think maybe Dave Dooley, the president, maybe should have taken out a couple of these people for drinks beforehand. Actually, they're blindsided. Some of the rage and the desire for revenge came from
the last minute nature of it.
Yeah, he just kind of dropped it in.
Well, speaking of last minute nature, continue to follow GoLocal closely as this evening the House Finance budget is slated to be unveiled. We'll be reporting on that. But let's get outside Rhode Island. Let's get for that big piece of news the last couple of days. President Donald Trump, when asked if he would take information from foreign dignitaries about potential opponents.
Importantly,
and he said,
not necessarily tell the FBI. So he's a traitor. He is a traitor. There you
But
have
do you
it.
think he treated
He's a
it?
sleaze.
He treated it like a business person, right? Like it just seems as though he wasn't wearing a
Transactional,
political hat. Transactional. Like I talk with people all the time.
Totally
You've got
amoral.
info. I've got.
He's totally amoral. Doesn't know anything about the law, about history, and he also because of all his vulnerabilities, his behavior, his quicksilver personality. He's very much at the mercy of Machiavellian, ruthless foreign leaders.
That is true.
You know,
We'll keep an eye on that.
He's a dangerous man.
What are you writing about this weekend?
Well, the big story is the possums. I don't know if you read about that. Each possum can eat 5,000 Lyme disease carrying deer ticks a week.
Wow.
So I think the biggest story around here is hire a possum. You know, a very, very important thing. Then we've got an interesting report. You know, we're moving pell-mell into marijuana legalization. Everybody be expected to be stoned all the time. The trouble is a new report has come out showing a correlation between opiate addiction and marijuana addiction. As you might remember, I've always said I think it's a gateway drug. So when they've legalized, at least according to this latest study in the Proceedings of something or other, some medical journal, you know, when they started to allow medical marijuana, the incidence of pot when the incidence of opiate addiction rose with it, 23%. So I've always felt kind of intuitively there's a correlation. Also, there are addictive personalities, or as they've discovered in states and studies in states such as West Virginia and so on. A lot of those people who've become addicted to fentanyl and all these other allegedly non-addictive but extremely addictive opiates were also taking other stuff.
Okay, so it's
So
possums,
yeah,
it's pot.
right. Addictive personalities.
And what else are we
pot.
writing
Oh
about?
boy, we've got a whole bunch of things here. What are we talking about, buddy? I did want to talk about, this is a big area for wind. There's a lot of wind, and there's going to be a lot of wind power, and there's a very interesting exhibit down in New Bedford, which is called, what's it called? Summer Winds. Four projects all about wind.
Okay.
Which I think is kind of neat, so I think people
Fascinating.
should go see
We'll
that.
read about that.
And then we want to talk about Raytheon. Raytheon, of course, is being bought by United Technologies. But interestingly, United Technologies is going to be based in Greater Boston, maybe in Boston. And I think this speaks to Boston's role as a huge techno center and growing a growing, what would you call it, world city. I don't think it'll hurt anybody down here, by the way. I don't think it'll have any effect.
We're going to be keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, if the Iranians attack us, maybe that's a problem. And there's another thing, it's just philosophical. You probably know Vermont is now going to try to bribe people to move there.
You knew there was a proposal in Rhode
down
Island.
here, yeah. I know, and I thought, because the population's flat, maybe it'll start falling, and yet the unemployment rate's 2.3%. It seems to be doing pretty well. So I think what we're saying here is sort of the mantra, growth for the sake of growth. Why is economic growth per se always wonderful?
That's
I want to raise this point. We're just obsessed. GDP growth,
Yep.
growth. But I wish we'd think a little bit more about if that is actually what we want. Don't we want a higher quality of life?
Well, we'll have to
Yeah.
read about it
That's
in Bob's Column this weekend.
Okay, do I have room for one more?
Sure do.
At McCoy Stadium, I took my little brother, who's a baseball expert, my little sister, who is not a baseball expert, to McCoy. And to my surprise, this was last Tuesday, big crowd, even though everyone knows they're moving.
Okay.
So 2/3 filled. It was a beautiful day, but there's trust me, it's sort of sad when the whole thing is going to be gone in a couple of years. So.
Well, you can read all about it in Robert Whitcomb's
Okay.
column on GoLocal
Great.
this weekend. Thank you very
Great.
much. And stay tuned to find out more from GoLocal Prop. Again, House Finance budget slated to be unveiled much later today. We'll have more on that throughout the weekend for you as well. And of course, we'll see you back on Monday for Business Monday with GoLocal CEO Josh Fenton. Everyone have a great weekend. We look forward to seeing you soon. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.